Hi everyone, I'm going to talk about Sybil Ludington today, and her story suffers from some of the same problems that Laurel Thatcher Ulrich points out about the Betty Ross story, namely that it lacks documentary evidence, but we'll get to that in a second. Sybil Ludington was 16 years old at the time that she apparently did these very patriotic, very heroic works. The first half of her story involves her and her siblings being home alone when a band of 50 or so Tory loyalists come to their house looking to kidnap their father, Colonel Ludington. A bounty has apparently been placed on his head, and so they're going to come kidnap him and collect the money. But the Ludington children hear about this. Sybil gathers her siblings together. They light all the candles in the house. They march back and forth in front of the windows, holding muskets, showing that there's someone on guard. And at one point, Sybil fires a musket out the window and scares away the would-be kidnappers. But the second, more famous part of her story has to do with a famous ride she makes in April of 1777. Colonel Ludington's militia apparently had a chance to go home, and one evening, a messenger knocks at the door and informs the colonel that the British are marching on Danbury, Connecticut. And Danbury is a location, a depot for military supplies. So it's important that the militia guard that place. Unfortunately, the messenger doesn't know where all the other militiamen live. He's tired, and there's no one else who can make this ride to gather the militia. But then there's Sybil. She either volunteers or her father tells her to do this. She gets on her horse and she rides from house to house across the countryside, basically saying the British are coming. They're going to attack Danbury. And she rides 40 miles, which is about twice the distance that Paul Revere rode. Now, this is a very amazing story. Unfortunately, it's not told until 1880 by Martha Lamb. She writes in her book about it, but up to that point, no one really had heard about Sybil Ludington. And after that first time it's told in 1880, it starts to pick up. The story is picked up by a few others, and it grows until Sybil has become, to some, a symbol of patriotic feminism almost. She's a symbol of the common woman, the common teenager, of the patriot movement. And she has become this symbol not because there's evidence that she actually made this ride, but rather because it sounds like a good story. Now, that doesn't mean it's false. It has become a myth, and myths are often thought of as bad things, but they're not always bad. They usually have a grain of truth if they're not completely true. And this is kind of what has happened with the Sybil Ludington story. There is no documentary evidence. There's family stories, but not even to the same degree as, say, Betty Ross's story. And so several historians question whether or not this ride was actually made by Sybil Ludington. And it really causes us to question what is the role of the historian at this point? Does he quash the story, saying there's no evidence whatsoever, therefore it didn't exist? Or does he act like Herodotus, accept the story, relay the story, regardless of whether it's true or not? And I'm interested in what your opinion is. Do you think it's acceptable to retell this story where there's very limited documentary evidence? And if so, what is the importance of the story? To me, the importance is that it provides an example of what a teenager can do and engage in this kind of heroism. And so whether or not it's 100% true, it's a good story. And it's a good story that builds up the patriot spirit, I guess, of Americans. But I'm interested in whether or not you think that it should be perpetuated, whether the story should be told time and again, and what impact that might have if it is continued to be told. Thank you.